Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello, Jessica Donovan here. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. So today we're going to be talking about Omega-3, and I cannot believe we have not covered this yet on the podcast. I had to triple check. I'm sure we've talked about this. Of course, we've talked about omega-3s within other episodes when we've talked about brain health, when we've talked about ADHD, when we've talked about inflammation, and I'm going to talk about all of those things today. But I want to specifically talk about omega-3s because I think there's confusion around omega-3s, and I want to make sure parents, you guys have the information that you need to make good choices when it comes to omega-3 sources in the diet and also supplements. Omega-3s are one of the common supplements we do prescribe to the families we work with here at Natural Super Kids. And so I think it's important that we choose the right type of omega-3 supplement, which we're going to talk about, but also try and cover bases in the diet as well. So let's talk about what omega-3s are to start off with. So omega-3s are a type of essential fatty acid. And these are fatty acids that our bodies need to function but cannot be produced by the body. So they're essential because we need to get them through the diet. There are two main types of omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. Both are really important, but they do play different roles in the body. And you'll find omega-3 supplements often will have different ratios of EPA and DHA. And it's important to know what each of these does, what their, primary function and role is, so that you can choose the best supplement if you go down that route. So omega-3s, super important for kids. They're one of the supplements we prescribe really often. One, because they're hard to get enough of through the diet. We're going to talk about that. And two, because kids do need a lot of them. And a lot of the kids' issues that we see, to do with mood and sleep and behaviour and inflammation require extra omega-3 support. So omega-3s are important for kids as they grow and develop. They play multiple roles in a healthy body. So they're very important in brain development, structure and function, really important in nervous system health, eye health, skin health. Omega-3s are a natural anti-inflammatory, so they help to reduce inflammation, and they are important to make up healthy cell membranes. So cells, we've got billions and billions and billions of cells within our body, and every single one of those cells has a membrane, and the omega-3 fatty acids are required to make sure those membranes are healthy, which is important from a whole health picture point of view, because when cell membranes are healthy, then our cells can function better, which improves health overall. Now, I want to talk a little bit about omega-3 during pregnancy and infancy, because this is a time where omega-3s are really, really important. So omega-3s are really important for pregnant women as well as children. If a woman is deficient in omega-3s through pregnancy and breastfeeding, it is believed to have long-term consequences for both mum and bub. So omega-3s are a really good thing to think about supplementing if you're pregnant, particularly in the the second and third trimesters. So there's a higher requirement of omega-3s throughout pregnancy overall. And one of the reasons that is because they're being used for brain development, which is happening in utero. And the second and third trimesters are key stages that require omega-3s in an even higher level. So baby will take what it needs through pregnancy, so mum can often end up depleted, and low omega-3s are associated with postnatal depression and mood disorders generally as well. So, one of the things we can do to improve our chance of not, suffering with postnatal depression or mood issues is to make sure we're getting enough omega-3s through pregnancy. When we are breastfeeding as mothers, breast milk is a very important source of omega-3s, particularly the DHA part of the omega-3. But mum needs good levels of omega-3 to produce milk that is rich in DHA. And DHA is that really crucial, I'll talk about this in a moment, but crucial for brain development. And so we want to make sure that mum's getting enough omega-3s so that baby is getting enough omega-3s when breastfeeding. Most baby formulas have added DHA in them, but the problem is that it's a powdered form of DHA. It's easily oxidized. So if a baby is formula fed, it's worth working with a practitioner to make sure that omega-3 levels are adequate as well. So as I said, EPA and DHA play very different roles within the brain. So EPA is important for neuron signaling and synapses, so it's involved more in the function of the brain, whereas DHA has more of a role in the development and structure of the brain. So this is why it's the most important omega-3 for kids, because that brain development is, happening. So sufficient levels of DHA particularly is needed for cognitive function, for learning, for memory, for release of brain chemicals, and for modulation of the blood-brain barrier that protects the brain from anything that might be sort of flowing through the blood. So DHA is generally the more important omega-3 fatty acid for kids, particularly when it comes to brain development. So let's talk a bit about inflammation. So inflammation, it's a term that us naturopaths use a lot because it is a factor in so many health conditions and concerns. And when we're talking about children, things like eczema, enlarged tonsils and adenoids, allergies, asthma, all have an inflammatory component. So we want to reduce inflammation as much as possible, and omega-3s can help modulate or, reduce inflammation. So if your child has any sort of inflammatory condition, then omega-3s can be really helpful. And it's the EPA omega-3 fatty acid that is most important when it comes to inflammation. So if you're looking at a fish oil supplement, you want to look for one that is high in DHA if you're looking for more of that brain support, and you want to look for one that is higher in the EPA if you're looking for more of that inflammatory support, reducing inflammation. So the other thing to take note of here when we're talking about omega-3 is the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. So omega-6 is another fatty acid. It is still essential. We still need to get omega-6 from our diet, and it is important in the body. But unfortunately, the ratio between omega-3 and omega-6 is completely skewed in the modern diet. So ideally, we want a ratio of 1-to-1 of omega-3 to omega-6. In the modern diet, it's closer to 1-to-20. And that's sort of, what we know as the average Australian diet. So we're getting 1 part omega-3 to 20 parts omega-6s. So we're getting 20 times the omega-6 that we need. Omega-6 is pro-inflammatory, so it increases inflammation. So this is a problem. And I wanted to mention this because, we can be pouring in all the omega-3s we want, but if your kids are still eating a high omega-6 diet or a diet that's high in omega-6 fatty acids, then we're not going to see the full beneficial effects of omega-3. So omega-6 is found in those processed inflammatory sort of seed oils, vegetable oils, canola oil, sunflower, safflower, corn, soy oils. That's where a lot of the omega-6s are coming into the diet. So we want to try and avoid those as much as possible. It's really like, if you're shopping at the supermarket, it is impossible to avoid omega-6 oils altogether. But if we can start to choose products that are lower in omega-6 oils, the sunflower, canola, safflower, corn, soy, vegetable oils, then that is going to help to enhance omega-3 levels in the body as well. So omega-3s can be beneficial for chronic conditions. Omega-3 can support learning, concentration, mental health. Omega-3 has been shown in studies to support and improve things like depression, anxiety, and even schizophrenia. Omega-3s are really important for kids that are like neurodiverse kids. So if your child has been diagnosed ADHD or autistic, then omega-3s can be a really good way to support their brain health, their mood, their sleep, and their behavior. So let's talk about how we can look at increasing or boosting omega-3s in the diet, and then we'll talk about supplements. So it is hard to get enough omega-3s into the diet. The best dietary source by far is fish and seafood, but kids need to be eating 2 to 4 serves of fish or seafood a week to get adequate levels of omega-3. Most kids are not doing that. It can be tricky to implement. Fish is expensive. And then there's the concern about heavy metals and mercury and fish farming and all of that sort of thing as well. So a few practical tips in terms of choosing better fish and seafood options. Wild caught is always a better option nutrition-wise. But, when we're looking at environmental impact, farmed fish is not great, but there is, a limit to how much fish there is. So the best thing is to choose fish that are small and lower on the food chain. So these fish are better for the environment, in terms of the environmental impact of us consuming these fish is better when we're choosing smaller fish, and they tend to be lower in the heavy metals as well. So when we think about the food chain and fish that are eating fish that are eating fish that are eating fish, the larger fish are going to build up more heavy metals like mercury and that sort of thing. So small fish is going to be the best option. Now, the best fish and seafood, I get asked this all the time. It really depends on where you live. Sardines are fantastic. So if you can get fresh sardines, that's great, but tin sardines are great as well. Don't take the bones out, mash them all up together. You can mix sardines through pasta, and it's a really cost-effective way to get some seafood into your family as well. Blend it into dips, add some to pizzas as well. So sardines are a fantastic source of omega-3. And as I said, if you're choosing tin sardines, it's really cost-effective. Fresh sardines are quite cost-effective as well. Squid or calamari can be a really good option as well. Garfish, kurong mullet, snapper, tinned salmon can be a good option as well. Obviously, we've got farmed salmon here in Australia when we're looking at fresh salmon. When we're looking at fresh salmon as opposed to tinned salmon. But we can find wild caught tinned salmon that is nice and high in omega-3. So rather than tin tuna, which I know is a staple for a lot of families, if we can switch over to tin salmon, we're going to be getting more omega-3s, and we can generally find some wild caught tin salmon that way as well. So you can make that into fish cakes. You can do like a salmon mornay as opposed to tuna mornay. You can mix tinned salmon with some avocado and mayonnaise and have it on crackers or in wraps for lunch. So it doesn't have to be lots of fresh seafood that we're getting in. We can mix it up and put some tinned seafood in as well. But getting 2 to 4 serves of fish is quite challenging for a lot of families. Before we get into supplements, I want to talk a bit about nuts and seeds, because there's probably people thinking, what about flaxseed oil? What about chia seeds and hemp seeds and flax seeds and walnuts and things like that? So yes, nuts and seeds do contain omega-3 fatty acids, but the form that they contain is called ALA. So it's not EPA or DHA. So ALA needs to be converted to EPA DHA before it is used in the body. And this conversion can be very inefficient. It is inefficient. It uses up nutrients in the process. So you're unlikely to meet the omega-3 demands of your child with only nuts and seeds, only flaxseed oil. They can be an addition, but they're not an amazing source of the EPA and the DHA. If you do want to add in some nuts and seeds for omega-3s, the best options are walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, and hemp seeds. And, these are great sources of nutrients overall, good sources of fiber as well. So they're worth adding into the diet for sure. But you're not going to get enough omega-3s from those foods alone. Let's talk a bit about supplements. So when it comes to supplements, quality matters. Please, please, please don't just choose the brand that is best at marketing or the brand that is most widely available. A lot of the little kid chewable omega-3s are pretty rubbish in terms of the amount of good stuff they contain, and the extra sort of, bad stuff they contain in terms of flavors and additives and things like that. So omega-3 supplements can be really helpful for kids. As an example, kids with ADHD, autistic kids, eczema, asthma, allergies. These are some of the common, health challenges, concerns, conditions that we recommend and prescribe omega-3s for. So omega-3s will help to dampen down any inflammation, and also support that brain and nervous system health as well. So you really want to look at the EPA DHA amount on the label of any sort of supplement that you purchase. Of course, we recommend, the high quality practitioner only products. And if you are wanting to get your hands on, a really good quality omega-3, you can definitely think about booking an express consultation with one of our practitioners. If you're a club member, you can get access to high quality practitioner only products in the Natural Super Kids Club as well. But you want to look for those higher quality brands and the amount of EPA and DHA. So when you're looking at a label of a fish oil, you will find like omega-3 and a number amount, and then you'll find the breakdown of EPA and DHA. So let me just give you an example of a high quality, I'm not going to mention any brands, but a high quality practitioner brand that we would recommend versus a, supermarket pharmacy brand that is marketed, for kids, the chewy little bursts, let's just call it that. So a liquid omega-3 that we would recommend, would have this is an example of one that we would recommend, would have 4.6 grams of omega-3 per teaspoon, 826 milligrams of EPA and 550 milligrams of DHA. There's others that we recommend that are higher in DHA as well. But to compare that with a supermarket widely available brand that I know a lot of kids are on, it would, a little chewable tablet would contain about 500 milligrams of omega-3 compared to 4.6 grams of omega-3 for the practitioner brand. So that would include 28 milligrams of EPA compared to 826 milligrams of EPA in the practitioner brand, and 133 milligrams of DHA compared to 550 milligrams of DHA. So you can see there's a huge difference there. And, you know, we wouldn't necessarily give every child that full dose of that practitioner brand oil. The benefit of, you know, giving a liquid, I know some people are like, my kids would never take a liquid, but the liquids actually have come a long way in terms of how they taste. And, you know, young kids particularly will only need a very small amount of that to get a really good dose of omega-3s. So I guess my point is try and steer clear of those cheaper, usually well-marketed brands, and just make sure you're having a look at exactly how much EPA and DHA are in that product comparatively to, you know, a higher quality practitioner brand, which I gave you an example of. The other thing about choosing a higher quality brand is their purity standards for things like heavy metals, for PCBs, which are another toxin that can be, you know, contained within fish oil. Of course, there are definitely Australian standards for things like PCBs and mercury, but the higher quality brands generally will go, you know, quite a few steps further and make sure there is, you know, that their heavy metal content and PCBs and things is much, much lower than what the Australian sort of standard is. The other thing you need to look at for omega-3 supplements are added ingredients, you know, things like artificial sweeteners and flavors that are often found in the kid-friendly brands to make them taste, you know, much better for kids, but you're not getting the benefits of the good amounts of what your child actually needs, which is the EPA and the DHA. So fish oil is one way to get omega-3 in, and then there is cod liver oil as well. So cod liver oil is fantastic for getting some omega-3s in, generally not as much omega-3 as a fish oil will have, but the benefit of a cod liver oil is you're also getting vitamin A and vitamin D that are naturally occurring within that cod liver oil. And those vitamins are very beneficial for kids with allergies, for immunity, for skin integrity as well. And cod liver oil is a really good way to get extra nourishment into really young children as well. So you might not want to, for example, supplement a 1-year-old with vitamin A and vitamin D in sort of a synthetic supplement, but within a cod liver oil, you can get those really important nutrients in without going overboard like you can with a lot of other supplements. So for things like eczema, allergies, immune support, young children, do consider cod liver oil as an alternative, or even sometimes in addition to a fish oil, which is just straight omega-3 generally. There are some other supplements that we recommend for brain health that contain extra ingredients like vitamin D is added, or phospholipids like phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylcholine, which are great for brain development and function where kids need extra support as well. If you're interested in exploring more in terms of which particular omega-3 is going to be best suited to your child, we can offer you that advice, that personalized advice in a express consultation or a full consultation, and I'll make sure the links to those are in the show notes. Lastly, how to get your kids to take an omega-3 supplement. So if you're looking at liquid fish oils or cod liver oils, straight off the spoon can work really well for some kids, and then having something to eat afterwards. So straight off the spoon, having a snack to get rid of that oily sort of texture that can be left in your mouth from a fish oil or a cod liver oil. You can add an omega-3 supplement, a fish oil supplement, to a salad dressing. You can mix it with tinned fish, depending on the flavour of it, of course. You can mix it in with Bliss Balls. So there's a particular omega-3 supplement that we prescribe that's a peppermint flavour. And so we've got a recipe in the Natural Super Kids Club for choc mint Bliss Balls that has this oil in there. So depending on the flavour of the oil of the omega-3 supplement, you can definitely mix it in with foods. And, syringes can work quite well as well. You can also, speaking about mixing it in with foods, we've got another recipe in the Natural Super Kids Club, if there's any club members listening, that is a vanilla custard with some oil mixed in that we formulated for those kids that struggle to take omega-3. But don't give up, try different flavors if your kids won't try it. Try smaller amounts, don't try and give them a full teaspoon straight away. A lot of kids won't need that much anyway, but go, small amounts and build it up over time to the full dose that your child requires for their needs. I hope that's helped clarify any questions you have about omega-3s, helps you understand why omega-3s are so important for kids and what to look for in supplements as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.